in based on water usage.
I could elaborate a little bit on the basic issue and the difficulties associated with determining whether you're going to have a surplus or a deficit in a given year, and it's related to Mother Nature to a large degree. In a year where there's a lot of rain in the summer, we sell less water, and there's a cost of overhead for running the water department. If we don't sell enough water, we run a deficit. And we run a deficit up until this year, or projected this year, for the past several years. If we have a drought, like we had a couple of years ago, where we had to actually shut the water off, that's the other extreme. In the middle, I guess, is more like this current year, where we didn't have a drought, and we didn't have tons of rain, and as a result, we probably sold, our peak volume of water. So if it's too dry and we have to restrict water, we don't sell enough, and if it's too wet, we don't sell enough. So that's the Mother Nature part of the situation. Second piece of it is, a year ago, when we went to set our tax rate, the Department of Revenue came and knocked on our door and said, we're not going to allow you to set the tax rate unless you increase your water bill, your water rates, because we're running in a deficit. It had been 2 years. And so we raised the rates, and then after looking at it, and we knew back then what they wanted us to increase those rates were insufficient to deal with the deficit. When we finally set the rates last year, our aim was, one, to restore the capital funds that we had taken money from to offset the deficit, because the enterprise does have to run a balanced budget. It can't run in a deficit. So at the end of the fiscal year, before the books were closed, we made transfers from the Stickney Wealth Fund and the MTBE Fund, which was money that we received as part of a lawsuit. So the goal was to restore the amount of money that was taken from those two funds over a period of 5 years, based on what would be the average of water revenue. The rates were set to provide that. Now we're running a surplus in excess of what we estimated, but this is not the low year on either side of the equation. It's probably the best year, the best volume of water sold, and as a result, we have to decide whether we're going to restore a greater amount of what was taken out of the capital funds, or we will hold in the water department some retained earnings so that we're able to cover a down year without having to raise the rates. So the goal was twofold. One was to set the rates so that we didn't have to raise the water rates again in a down year by creating a little bit of retained earnings, and two, to refund the two capital funds that we took money for. The capital funds are for dealing with the infrastructure of the water department, not the cost of producing water.
I can fully appreciate what the goal was, and
the goal is that,
and
it's not a was.
I fully appreciate the volatility. My question quite clearly was, how was the $240,000 projection reached? Because depending on how it was reached, it could be woefully wrong and has nothing at all to do with the water usage that may happen in the future. On the back side of the sheet I passed out, I ran a scenario that said if you used actual consumption values for Q1 and Q2, and we all know that Q2 was extended for many people in town to be 110 days. What you've actually done at that point is, versus a typical year, you've realized revenue in Q2 that would normally occur in Q3. And if that's what the projections are based on, I stand before you to tell you that I believe the projections are wrong and could be significantly wrong. Tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars wrong. So if you don't have the information for how the projection was reached, you can't vote because you don't have the information necessary to make an informed decision, so we don't keep going through the cycle of raising rates, lowering rates, excess surplus, or deficit.
I think, Mr. Seri? I
Mr.
think
Delaney and then Mr.
he makes a very valid point in terms of we don't know how the projection of the surplus was determined. Was it based upon Q2 bills, based upon usage? Also, I know, having attended the FinCom meeting last week, that surplus amount of 240 has been adjusted downward because what they're seeing is the uncollectibles have increased by about 3%, up to about 13% versus 10%. So I think as of last week, the water revenue projected surplus through the end of the year is about $184,000 now, not the 240. And also, I think you make a very, very valid point as to how the projection was calculated. So I'd like to hear from, if Mr. Carnevale has that information, or Mr. Clark. I know he's not present this evening, but I think we need to know that. I think Mr. Rabbit makes a very valid point.
Mr. Prisco?
Well, I said this at the last meeting. I think there's still some work to be done and that we should hold off on doing this until May, until we run this through a little bit more and collect some more data, actual data, and see where we are. I don't see what the rush is to have this motion in front of us this evening. Why can't it wait till May? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and there's still a lot of reviewing of the information that has to be done. I don't know why it's back here tonight. I thought we agreed that it wasn't going to come back here.
No, we didn't agree with that.
No.
We didn't. The majority didn't agree with that. That was your.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I
majority
guess I was
didn't
on. Yeah, I'm on the island by myself on this one. I know.
No, you were as of that, but
Yeah, you were.
I think what we had said was that we could consider changing water rates at any point in time. And that's what we look to reconsider. But I think he makes a very valid point this evening, in conjunction with the fact that the projected surplus has, in less than 2 weeks, has been adjusted downward about over $50,000.
To change that quick between now and our last meeting,
Well,
again, I lose confidence in the
There-
process.
Well, there's another aspect of it too, because to some degree, you know, you're looking at past trends. We've got a whole half a year that we don't have information on, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what the spring is going to bring. If it's a rainy spring, then we're not going to sell as much water.
Let's wait.
Right. And maybe we need to go back and review the policy associated with setting the water rates. I suspect that they were, you know, the water rate was supposed to be reviewed in November each year by the board, right? And it's been delayed for a number of different reasons. And here we are in February now, and you know, we're further into the process of knowing what the year is going to be like. I suspect that back then, whenever this was set up to look at it, was that it gave you an opportunity to adjust the rates to deal with, you know, any trend that might have been developing in the first half of the fiscal year.
So we don't get caught in a deficit situation,
Right.
compounding the problems.
Again, like we learned a year ago, is that if we have to raise the rates as a result of a deficit, we can do that at any time. You know, in one case, we were actually forced to do it. My understanding tonight is that the recommendations of the Water Commissioners was not to raise the rates at all, or take no action. Is that correct?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, this is the first that I'm hearing that the surplus is now gonna be 180 as opposed to 240. And I think the recommendation from the Water Commission was based on the 240, so I don't know how that would change our recommendation to the board, or how, in fact, it changed over the course of the last 4 weeks, but, you know, I think I would feel more comfortable if the Water Commission re-met and discussed it further. I mean, 180 is a huge cry from 240.
Well, we have our Director of Public Works, and we also have our Director of Finance here. Perhaps we can get a little bit of light on where the numbers are at this point.
Problem with the numbers changing is the lag in getting the boards to meet and get to you guys is the number that Mark Kolek projected was on 5 months of revenue. We're now 3 more months. We have 8 months of revenue now. So we went with, because we had to meet a November deadline to get you guys, we went with, frankly, all the data we had. So we gave you the best projection at the time. And right now, we have 3 more months of data, 3 more months of collections. So there is better data.
So we
It's
have
an
6 or
estimate.
7 months, 6 or 7 months of data. It's only February from July.
We built 6, yeah,
So
we had
you-
5 months, now we have 7 months of data. Thank
7
you.
months of data.
So the estimate is based on actual billings. We have an estimate based on the rate study of billings per quarter.
Right.
And as I mentioned before, and I've talked to the gentleman here, is his meter was read plus or minus 7 days for 5 years in a row. We had 2 extreme events last fall, and we'll talk about that during the snow and ice deficit, where I had 2 people out in the water department, so didn't have people to read the meter. Number 2, the entire DPW was picking up trees. So I had to focus somewhere else. So
I
it
understand.
got behind for 1 quarter.
And-
The prior 5 years, though, it's been plus or minus 7 days for the readings.
No, and I understand, you
And
explained
we are
that.
not unique. We have a rate same as about 500 other communities in New England. So we do not have a unique rate. We're now like other communities.
And I understood that, and you explained that very well 2 weeks ago. But to Mr. Rabbitt's point, if your revenue projection through year end is based upon the Q2 bills that,
We do it monthly. As Mark mentioned, there's a 6-week cycle to read all the meters.
Oh, I know, but
So
the
bills
Q-
go up monthly, not
Q2
quarterly.
but Q2 bills for, his address is Old Farm? Are you Old Farm? Yes. And his was read at the 108th or 9th day? Majority of that side of the town going easterly was probably read on about 109th day due to the storms in October. So if your revenue projections are based upon consumption in billing Q2.
Actually, I
then
disagree with you because most of the readings for most water use is the quarter before. He's unusual. His water use is after most everybody else in town. So
His water,
his peak rate is after most everybody else in town's rate. His is slanted. His is delayed for some reason. So most of our people that bill, the summer bill, the first bill that goes out, that's the big bill.
well, I know it's not
So-
true for myself either. It's more in line with,
Well, from the general revenue projections that Mark has. So no, the peak, the period where the peak gap between readings,
I just think your revenue projections are flawed. And I think I have great concerns, because I know his bill was read in about the 108th, 109th day. My bill was read in the same, my meter was read in the same time period. I think you have to go back, do the math over, and come back to us. And if you
there's no
can-
math to do over. We're just tracking what we bring in.
To me, regardless of what it shows, in other words, if you go back and you retrack it, so your revenue projections are gonna be 240, 180, or 130. Whatever it is, it is. Whatever it is, it is. The question, as far as I'm looking at it, is, is the current rate structure that we have something we wanna stick with and try for a period of time and see where we end up, based on all the other conditions that come into play. That, to me, that was nice information to have. It happened to trigger an awful lot of discussion, because we're talking about $250,000 surplus in 1 year, which was of concern to Mr. Prisco and even to me to a certain degree, other than I still think we need to make sure we raise enough revenue to pay back what we borrowed from ourselves and those other funds. But we haven't even run the year yet. let's let the rates.
I'm not saying.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
So
I
to me,
agree.
so tonight,
Don't
I have no
touch it.